His voice was quiet, but I already knew what was coming. You call this acceptable? I I tried my best, I said. That was the wrong answer. My father slammed the report card on the table so hard Ryan jumped in his chair. Your best? He said. If this is your best, then you're already falling behind. My mother didn't say anything. She never did. Ryan smirked slightly. He always liked when I got in trouble. My father leaned back in his chair and looked at me like I was a problem he needed to solve. You know your cousin, Daniel? He asked. I nodded. Straight A's every year. I can do better next time, I whispered. He shook his head. That's what losers say. His voice was quiet, but I already knew what was coming. You call this acceptable? I I tried my best, I said. That was the wrong answer. My father slammed the report card on the table so hard Ryan jumped in his chair. Your best? He said. If this is your best, then you're already falling behind. My mother didn't say anything. She never did. Ryan smirked slightly. He always liked when I got in trouble. My father leaned back in his chair and looked at me like I was a problem he needed to solve. You know your cousin, Daniel? He asked. I nodded. Straight A's every year. I can do better next time, I whispered. He shook his head. That's what losers say. That word stayed with me. Loser. I was 12, and that was the day I realized something important. In my father's eyes, love had conditions, and I had already failed them. The years after that moment only got worse. Ryan became the golden child. Everything he did was amazing. Everything I did was not enough. If Ryan scored a goal in soccer, my father would throw him a party. If I won a science competition, my father would say, "Good, now do something bigger." By the time I turned 16, I stopped trying to impress him. Not because I didn't care, but because I was tired. Tired of chasing approval that never came. One night at dinner, my father made an announcement. Ryan got accepted into the elite leadership program at school. Everyone clapped. My mother smiled proudly. Then my father looked at me. And what about you? I stared at my plate. I got a part-time job, I said quietly. Ryan laughed. A job? Doing what? Bookstore. My father sighed. You see the difference, he said to my mother. One son is preparing to lead the world, he pointed at Ryan, while the other, he paused, is stocking shelves. The table went silent. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't say anything, because arguing never helped. My father leaned forward. You know what your problem is, he said. No ambition. That night, I made a promise to myself. One day, I would leave this house, and when I did, I would never come back. 4 years later, I kept that promise. I left the day after my college graduation, not because my family celebrated me, but because they didn't. Ryan had just gotten accepted into a prestigious business school, so my graduation dinner turned into a celebration for him. My father raised a glass. To my son, Ryan, he said proudly, the future CEO. Everyone cheered. Then he looked at me. And to my other son, he shrugged. Good luck figuring things out. People laughed politely, like it was a joke, but it wasn't. That was the moment something inside me broke. I stood up from the table. I actually already figured it out, I said. My father raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? Yes. I grabbed my jacket. I'm leaving tomorrow. My mother looked surprised. Leaving where? New York. Ryan laughed. You don't even have a job there. I will. My father smirked. New York eats people like you alive. Maybe, I said, but at least it won't call me a failure every day. The room went silent. For the first time in my life, my father didn't have a response, so I walked out. And the next morning, I disappeared from their lives. The first year in New York was brutal. Tiny apartment, 3 roommates, 2 part-time jobs. I slept 4 hours a night. But for the first time in my life, I felt free. No comparisons, no expectations. Just me, and my determination to prove one thing, not to my father, not to Ryan, but to myself, that I wasn't a failure. 5 years passed. 5 years of sleepless nights, failed startups, rejected job applications, moments where I almost gave up. But then something happened, something that changed everything. The small tech project I started in my apartment suddenly exploded. Investors started calling. Companies wanted partnerships. Within 2 years, my company was worth millions. By 32, I became something my father always respected. Successful. But the strange thing was, by then, I didn't care what he thought anymore. Until the day he called me. After 10 years of silence, his voice sounded older, weaker. "Son," he said, "I think we need to talk." And what he said next changed everything I thought I knew about my family. For 10 years, my phone never rang with my father's number. Not on birthdays, not on holidays, not even when my company appeared in business magazines. It was like I had been erased from the family. At first, that silence hurt, but over time, I stopped expecting anything. I built a life that didn't include them, a life where I didn't have to compete for love. So when my phone lit up with Dad one Tuesday morning, I almost didn't answer. I was sitting in my office on the 38th floor overlooking Manhattan. The city buzzed beneath me like it always did. Horns, sirens, people rushing to somewhere important. My assistant had just finished telling me about an upcoming investor meeting when the call appeared. For a moment, I just stared at it. 10 years. 10 years of nothing. And now this. I told my assistant to give me a minute and picked up the phone. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end. Then I heard something I had never heard before. My father hesitating. "Son?" His voice sounded different. Older. Rougher. I leaned back in my chair. "That depends," I said calmly. "Who's asking?" Another pause. "It's your father." I almost laughed. I figured that part out. More silence. For a man who used to lecture for hours, he suddenly seemed to have nothing to say. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I saw you on television last week." "Oh, your company, it's very successful." "Thank you." The conversation felt awkward, like 2 strangers forced to talk. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. "I'm proud of you." I closed my eyes. For most of my life, those 4 words were all I ever wanted. Now that I finally heard them, they felt empty. "You didn't call just to say that," I said. He exhaled slowly. "No, I didn't think so." Another pause. Then he said something that made my heart skip. "Your brother needs help." Ryan. The golden child, the future CEO, the son who could do no wrong. "What kind of help?" I asked. My father hesitated again. "The company he started, yes, it failed." I blinked. That didn't sound like the Ryan I remembered. Ryan had always been the one destined for greatness, at least according to my father. "How bad?" I asked. "Very bad." "How bad?" Another long silence. "Millions in debt." I sat up straight. "That's impressive." "This isn't a joke." "I know." My father sighed. "He trusted the wrong partners. And they disappeared. And now he could lose everything. For a moment, I didn't say anything. Then the realization hit me. You want me to bail him out. My father didn't respond, which meant I was right. I stood up and walked toward the window. Below me, the city stretched endlessly. 10 years ago, I arrived here with 2 suitcases and no connections. Now, my company employed over 400 people, and the man who once called me a failure was asking for help. The irony was almost poetic. Let me get this straight, I said. For 22 years, Ryan was the golden child. That's not, and I was the disappointment. That's not fair. But now that the golden child messed up, I paused. You're calling the failure. My father's voice hardened slightly. This is family. I laughed quietly. Family? Yes. Funny, I said, because I don't remember family when I was working 2 jobs and sleeping on a couch in Brooklyn. That was your choice. No, I said calmly, that was survival. The line went quiet again. Then he said something unexpected. Ryan didn't want me to call you. That caught my attention. Why not? He said you'd say no. I looked out at the skyline. Ryan knew me better than my father did. So why did you call anyway? I asked. Because I'm his father. And you weren't mine? The silence that followed lasted almost 20 seconds. Then my father said something that surprised me. I made mistakes. That was new. I had never heard him admit that before. But one apology didn't erase a lifetime. What exactly do you want? I asked. Ryan owes $12 million. I almost choked. 12 million? Yes. That's not help. That's a rescue mission. He can't pay it. And you think I should? He's your brother. I rubbed my temples. The situation felt surreal. 10 years of silence, and the first call was a request for $12 million? You know what's funny? I said. What? When I left home, you said New York would eat me alive. Yes. But instead, it made you strong, he said quietly. I didn't respond, because for the first time he sounded almost respectful. Then he said something that changed everything. There's something else. What? Ryan's partners weren't the only problem. What do you mean? They were using him. For what? My father's voice dropped lower. Money laundering. My stomach tightened. You're kidding. I wish I was. And Ryan didn't know? We're not sure. I turned away from the window. And now? They're threatening him. That changed the situation completely. This sounds like a police problem, I said. They already know. And? If he can't pay the debt, my father stopped talking. What happens? I asked. They'll come after the family. The words hung in the air. For the first time in the conversation, I felt something other than anger. Concern. Not for Ryan, but for my mother. What about Mom? I asked. She's scared. That image hit harder than I expected. My mother had always stayed quiet during my father's harsh lectures, but she was never cruel, just passive. And now she was caught in the middle. Where is Ryan? I asked. At home. Still? Yes. I shook my head. The future CEO hiding in his childhood bedroom. Life had a strange sense of humor. So you want $12 million, I said. Yes. To save Ryan. Yes. To protect the family. Yes. I took a deep breath. I'll think about it. 2 days later, I was on a flight back to the city I swore I would never return to. The same city where I grew up. The same house where I learned what it felt like to never be enough. As the plane descended, memories flooded back. The cracked basketball hoop in the driveway, the oak tree Ryan fell out of when he was 8, the kitchen where my father called me a loser for the first time. I hadn't been back in 10 years, and honestly, I didn't miss it. A black car picked me up from the airport and drove me straight to my parents' neighborhood. Everything looked smaller than I remembered. The houses, the streets, even the old park where we used to play. But the tension in my chest felt just as big. When the car finally stopped in front of the house, I stared at it for a long moment. Same white paint, same front porch, same place where I walked out a decade ago. Except this time, I wasn't the broke kid leaving. I was the successful son returning. And somehow that made the moment feel even heavier. I stepped out of the car and walked to the door. Before I could knock, it opened. My mother stood there. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked older, more fragile. Her hair had more gray than I remembered, but her eyes were exactly the same. And then she did something she hadn't done in years. She hugged me, tightly. "I missed you," she whispered. Her voice trembled. I didn't know how to respond, so I simply hugged her back. Inside the house, everything looked almost identical. Same furniture, same family photos on the walls. Except something caught my attention. There were pictures of Ryan everywhere. Graduations, awards, business conferences. But there were almost none of me. That familiar feeling returned, the invisible child. My father walked into the living room. For a moment, we just stared at each other. He looked smaller. Age had softened the sharp confidence he once carried. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I came to talk." He nodded. Then Ryan appeared behind him, and I almost didn't recognize him. The confident, cocky brother I remembered was gone. His shoulders were slumped. Dark circles sat under his eyes. His beard was messy. And for the first time in his life, Ryan looked defeated. "Well," he said awkwardly, "look who came back." I crossed my arms. "You look terrible." He gave a tired laugh. "Yeah, life does that." For a moment, none of us knew what to say. Then my father cleared his throat. "Let's sit down." We all gathered around the dining table, the same table where I was once compared to everyone else. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Ryan spoke first. "I told Dad not to call you." "I know. You should have stayed out of this. That's not your decision." Ryan rubbed his face with both hands. "You don't understand how bad this is." "Then explain it." He looked at our father, then back at me. "I partnered with 2 investors 2 years ago." "Okay." "They had connections." "With who?" "People who move money." I frowned. "You mean criminals?" Ryan nodded slowly. "At first, everything looked legitimate. But they started routing money through our company." My stomach tightened. "You didn't report it?" "I didn't realize it first." "And when you did?" He looked down at the table. "It was too late." "How much money?" "Hundreds of millions." The room went silent. Then he said something even worse. "And they used my name for everything." "So, legally," I said slowly, "you're responsible." "Yes." I leaned back in my chair. "And now they want 12 million? That's the amount they say I owe. And if you don't pay?" Ryan looked at our father again. "They'll start collecting differently." My mother looked terrified. That part of the situation was real. But something still didn't make sense. Ryan had always been smart, ambitious, careful. So why trust them? I asked. Ryan hesitated. Then he said something that made the room go quiet. Because Dad told me to. I slowly turned toward my father. What? Ryan sighed. They were his contacts. My heart skipped. Dad introduced you to them? Ryan nodded. He said they were powerful investors. I looked at my father. He looked uncomfortable. You vouched for criminals? I asked. I didn't know, he said quickly. You didn't check? They looked legitimate. Ryan laughed bitterly. That's not the whole story. My father glared at him. Ryan? No, Ryan said. He deserves to know. The tension in the room thickened. What story? I asked. Ryan leaned forward. You always wondered why Dad treated you differently. My chest tightened. Yes? Ryan looked at our father, then back at me. Because you weren't supposed to be here. The words hit like a punch. What? Ryan hesitated, then said the words that shattered everything I thought I knew. You weren't Dad's first choice. The room felt smaller. Explain. Ryan exhaled slowly. Before you were born, Mom was pregnant with another child. I frowned. I never knew that. Because Dad made sure nobody talked about it. My father stood up suddenly. That's enough. Ryan ignored him. The baby died. My mother started crying softly. And Dad never got over it. My heart pounded. What does that have to do with me? Ryan looked straight at me. Dad believed that baby was going to be perfect. Silence filled the room. And when you were born, he paused. You weren't. I stared at my father, waiting for him to deny it, but he didn't. Instead, he looked down, and in that moment, I realized something that broke my heart more than anything else. Ryan was telling the truth. For my entire life, I wasn't competing with Ryan. I was competing with a ghost, a child who never even lived, and I had been losing that battle since the day I was born. For a long moment after Ryan finished speaking, nobody in the room moved. The air felt heavy, like the truth itself had weight. I looked at my father, waiting for him to say something, anything. But he just stood there staring at the table, and somehow that silence hurt more than if he had yelled. So, it's true? I finally said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. My father rubbed his forehead. It's not that simple. I laughed quietly. Funny, it sounds pretty simple. Ryan shifted in his chair uncomfortably. Look, I shouldn't have said it like that. No, I interrupted. You said it exactly the way it needed to be said. I turned back to my father. You spent my entire childhood comparing me to someone who never even existed. That's not fair, he said. Fair? I repeated. You called me a failure when I was 12. He didn't respond. You told people I had no ambition. Still silence. You treated Ryan like the future of the family. I paused. And me like a backup plan. My father finally looked at me. His eyes weren't angry. They looked tired. You think I don't know that? He said quietly. That caught me off guard. What? I know I pushed you too hard. You didn't push me, I said. You erased me. My mother wiped tears from her face. Please stop fighting, she whispered. But the dam had already broken. No, I said softly. This conversation should have happened 20 years ago. Ryan leaned forward. Look, this isn't about the past. We have a real problem right now. You mean your $12 million problem? Yes. And the criminals who want their money. Ryan nodded. That's not something we can ignore. I looked at him carefully. For the first time in my life, Ryan didn't look confident. He looked scared. What exactly are they threatening? I asked. Ryan hesitated. They said if the money isn't paid within 30 days. What? They'll come here. My mother gasped. And do what? Ryan swallowed hard. They didn't specify, but everyone in the room knew what that meant. My father walked over to the window. This is my fault, he said quietly. Ryan frowned. No, it's not. Yes, it is. He turned toward us. The investors who approached Ryan, I knew them from years ago. You said that already, I replied, but you don't know the whole story. Something about his tone made the room go still. What story? I asked. My father hesitated. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. They originally wanted to invest in you. I blinked. What? 5 years ago, when your company started growing fast. My mind raced. That's impossible. I never met them. Because I told them no. The room went silent. You what? I said. I refused to introduce them to you. Why? He looked directly at me. Because I knew what kind of people they were. My jaw clenched. So instead, you introduced them to Ryan? Ryan looked shocked. Wait, you knew they were dangerous? My father shook his head quickly. I knew they were aggressive investors. I didn't know they were criminals. That's a pretty big difference, I said. I thought Ryan could handle them. Ryan stood up suddenly. You thought I could handle them? His voice cracked with anger. They destroyed my company. I didn't know it would go that far. Ryan laughed bitterly. You always believed I was stronger. And you always treated him like he was weak. He pointed at me. For once in your life, you were wrong. The tension in the room felt explosive. And then something strange happened. My phone rang. Everyone looked at me. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? A deep voice responded. Good evening. Who is this? I believe you're visiting your family right now. My heart skipped. How do you know that? The man chuckled. We keep track of important people. Ryan's face went pale. Put it on speaker, he whispered. I pressed the button. The voice filled the room. Ryan, the man said calmly, I assume you're listening. Ryan swallowed. Yes. Excellent. My father stepped closer. Who is this? You know who this is. The man sounded amused. You owe us $12 million. Ryan's hands started shaking. We're working on it. 30 days. I know. But here's the interesting part. The man paused. Your brother is worth far more than that. Everyone looked at me. My chest tightened. What do you want? I asked. Another chuckle came through the phone. We prefer efficient solutions. Meaning? If your brother pays the debt, the problem disappears. And if he doesn't? The voice turned colder. Then your family becomes collateral. My mother started crying again. This is insane, my father said. The man ignored him. You built a very impressive company. Thank you, I said sarcastically. Successful people understand business. And criminals understand threats. Call it whatever you like. The line went quiet for a moment. Then the man said something chilling. We'll call again soon. The phone clicked. The call ended. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Ryan whispered, They found you. I looked at him. They already knew about me. My father sat down slowly. What are we going to do? The truth was, I already knew the answer, but it wasn't the one they expected. I stood up and grabbed my coat. Ryan frowned. Where are you going? To solve the problem. My father looked confused. You're going to pay them? I looked at him, then shook my head. No. Then what? I opened the door. I'm going to end this. Ryan's voice was nervous. How? I turned back toward them, and for the first time that night, I smiled. Because they made one huge mistake. What? Ryan asked. They think I'm the same person who left this house 10 years ago. I stepped outside. But I'm not that kid anymore. Behind me, my father asked the final question. What are you going to do? I looked back at the house, at the family that had broken me, and the family I was somehow still trying to protect. Then I said quietly, I'm going to make sure they regret ever touching my family. And this time, I meant it. The night air felt colder than I remembered. I stood outside my parents' house, staring at the quiet street where I had grown up. 10 years ago, I left this place feeling like the biggest failure in the world. Now I was back, not as the boy who wanted approval, but as the man who no longer needed it. Behind me, the front door opened. Ryan stepped outside. Wait, he said. I stopped walking, but didn't turn around. You shouldn't do this alone, he continued. This isn't your problem. I finally looked at him. For 20 years, I said calmly, you were the golden child. Ryan sighed. Yeah, look how that turned out. For the first time in our lives, there was no competition between us, just two brothers standing in the same mess. They're dangerous people, Ryan said quietly. I know. They're not going to negotiate. Then they picked the wrong person. Ryan studied my face. You've changed. Everyone does. I opened my car door. Ryan spoke again. Where are you going? To meet them. Ryan's eyes widened. Are you crazy? No. You don't even know where they are. I smiled slightly. Yes, I do. Ryan frowned. How? Because people like them always want the same thing. What? Control. I got into the car, and the easiest way to control someone, I started the engine, is to believe they're desperate. The meeting happened 2 nights later, an abandoned warehouse near the docks, exactly the kind of place you'd expect criminals to operate. 3 black SUVs were parked outside, 6 men stood near the entrance, and 1 man waited inside. He was older, mid-50s, expensive suit. Calm eyes. The kind of man who looked more like a businessman than a criminal. Welcome, he said as I walked in. You must be Ryan's brother. I'm the one you called. He smiled. Yes. You owe us $12 million. Ryan does. Your family. Not by your definition. The man gestured to a chair. Sit. I didn't move. I'd rather stand. He studied me carefully. You're different from your brother. That's what everyone says. He was emotional. And I'm not? No. The man folded his hands. You're calculating. That depends. On what? On who I'm dealing with. He smiled slightly. I like you already. Good. Now let's discuss business. I pulled out a small folder and placed it on the table. What's this? He asked. Information. About? About you. His smile faded. He opened the folder slowly. Inside were documents, photos, financial records. The room went quiet. How did you get this? He asked. I run a tech company. And? Information is our specialty. He flipped through the pages. These accounts. Yes. They're hidden. Not very well. The man leaned back in his chair. You're threatening me. No, I said calmly. I'm negotiating. The guards around the room shifted slightly, but the man raised a hand, stopping them. You think this gives you power? I know it does. He stared at me. You're very confident. I made one mistake. What mistake? You assumed I was desperate. The man closed the folder. Then what are you? I leaned forward slightly. I'm prepared. The room fell silent. Finally, he asked the question that mattered most. What do you want? Ryan's debt disappears. That's not cheap. You've already made plenty of money. And if I refuse? I nodded toward the folder. Then your entire operation becomes public. His eyes narrowed. You'd risk your brother's life? No. I stood up. Because if anything happens to my family, I paused. That information gets released automatically. The man studied me for a long moment. Then, suddenly, he started laughing. A deep, genuine laugh. Your father was right, he said. My heart skipped. What? He smiled. You're the dangerous one. The room went quiet again. You know my father? I asked slowly. Of course. That sentence felt like a punch. How? The man leaned forward. Your father used to work for us. The world seemed to stop. What? 25 years ago. That's impossible. Is it? My mind raced. All the strange pieces suddenly started connecting. My father worked with you? He managed investments. Illegal ones? The man shrugged. Let's say creative ones. I clenched my fists. So Ryan wasn't an accident. No, he was a second chance. For your father. The room felt smaller. And me? I asked. The man smiled slightly. You were the son he wanted to keep away from this world. Everything inside my chest tightened. You're lying. Am I? He leaned back. Your father pushed you harder than Ryan. That's not protection. That's preparation. The truth felt confusing, painful, but somehow possible. Why would he do that? I asked. The man answered calmly. Because he knew one day you might be the only one strong enough to fight people like me. The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, the man stood up. Your brother's debt is gone. Just like that. What? You win. Why? He smiled slightly. Because I respect smart opponents. He walked past me toward the door. But remember something. What? Your father always believed in you. I stood there frozen, not knowing whether to believe him. 2 days later, everything was over. The threats stopped. Ryan's debt disappeared. Life slowly returned to normal. That evening, I sat on the front porch of my parents' house. My father came outside and sat beside me. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, You know the truth now. Yes, I never hated you. I looked at him. You made it hard to tell. He nodded slowly. I thought if I pushed you harder, you'd become stronger. I sighed. That's not how it felt. I know. For the first time in my life, my father looked truly regretful. I was afraid, he said. Of what? That my past would destroy this family. I looked at the quiet street. You almost did. He nodded again. But you saved us. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said the words I had waited my entire life to hear. I'm proud of you. This time, they felt real. Not because I needed them, but because I finally understood them. And for the first time in 30 years, I didn't feel like the forgotten son. I felt like the one who survived everything and built something stronger than the past. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were in this place?